As a programming note, this episode was recorded at the end of 2024. Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. Today on the podcast, WGA West member and host Jonterri Gadson is joined by Víctor Sánchez, Executive Director for the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, also known as LAANE, an organizing and advocacy institution committed to economic, environmental, and racial justice. LAANE brings together community power and labor power to win policies that improve the lives of working families in Los Angeles and in Long Beach. Now, here's Jonterri.
Hi, Victor. Thank you for joining me on Third and Fairfax. We've had WGA West members out in support of various LAANE actions and events, so I'm excited to learn more about you and the work that LAANE is doing throughout Los Angeles. Good to have you.
It's good to be here.
All right, so let's get started with you. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what led you to the work you're doing now?
It's a great question. So I'm homegrown. I'm from LA.
Nice.
I grew up in Northeast LA. My parents are immigrants, and I grew up in an immigrant working class family. And so I think for me, I come into this work very intuitively. I think my own personal experiences are rooted in my family's economic opportunity. And, without the jobs that my family had, and like many of us right here in the county, I think my sister and I's ability to kind of, go to school and be able to get degrees and get to work, I think would have been a lot different. And so I think for me, the importance of having access to a good paying job and a good family sustaining job was always a thread, for me. And so, I was able to get involved in undergraduate at UC Santa Cruz, where I got involved in student activism there. Mainly protesting student fee hikes and a lot of other things there. Yeah, I mean, I was going to school during the Schwarzenegger years, and tuition was going up 30% a year, so it was too much of a steady clip, I think, for a lot of students to handle. And so, I got involved, and I think very quickly learned about the importance of doing organizing and building coalitions across campus, but also across the system. And I think it was my first introduction to organized labor, where on campus we had AFSCME 3299 as well as UAW. And
so what are those?
Yeah, so AFSCME 3299 represented the service workers on campus, the cafeteria workers or other service workers that were on campus, and UAW represented the graduate students, the teaching assistants that were on. So that was my first interface with labor, and when they had contract fights, I think I was like, wow, this is amazing, like the power of protest, the power of solidarity. And so I just started piecing things together, and I think understood, very quickly that the power of collective action and what collective action could yield in terms of like winning actual, like meaningful, concrete changes in people's lives. And I was hooked. And so I think for me, the student movement was my entry point, and I got a chance to then get involved in the labor movement. It took me out east for a good minute before coming back home, and it's a pretty big privilege, I think, for me to be able to do this work at home. And so,
that is nice.
Yeah, it's an inspiring thing. My family's still around. I live now in Northeast LA.
Oh, that's
where
nice.
I grew up, so it's really cool. And so, yeah, I think I'm very resolved to like trying to make a dent here and improve people's lives, and just by virtue of how I grew up.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Like, it sounds like you mean like sometimes we go off, we get educated, we learn things, and then we stay in that community and we're helping another community, but you're able to come home and help your own community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
It's an immense privilege, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an opportunity I take full advantage of, that's for sure.
That's great. So give us a little bit of history on LAANE. Like, why is it critical for labor and community groups to like form these kinds of alliances?
Yeah, so LAANE, the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, was founded in '93. It was born out of the civil unrest, and I think a recognition by labor groups here in LA that, it wasn't enough just to have unions at the forefront of trying to change the city and improve the lived conditions of a lot of marginalized communities here in LA. The civil unrest, I think, in a lot of ways, uplifted a lot of the struggles that have persisted systemically, right, for a lot of years, and some of which we're still kind of dealing with today. I think you can make the argument there. But I think ultimately there was a need for more capacity. And so Maria Elena Durazo, who was the head of Unite Here Local 11 back there, Miguel Contreras, who also played a critical role. Madeline Janis, who's one of our original founders, got together and created this organization to essentially be a partner with the labor movement in terms of pushing the envelope on economic justice issues. And so LAANE was founded in '93. We've been around for over 30 years now, and we work in a few different sectors of the economy, mostly focusing on low-wage sectors. And so whether it be in grocery and retail, obviously hospitality and tourism, we also work with the teachers union, and with the building and construction trades as well in a lot of instances. And so we try to find partnerships in sectors of the economy where we know that improvements need to be made. And we do that all under the guise of trying to just improve living conditions for working families in this region. Yeah,
no, that's amazing and important. So sounds like LAANE is a group that works with, makes alliances with unions, and what other types of groups?
Yeah, so I always describe us as like a bridge. We're a bridge builder, right? Because I think ultimately, it's not enough, to build power just in the workplace. And obviously, the role of unions is, just so important, right? Especially in this economy, pushing back against corporate power and the way in which the economy is structured. It doesn't work for everyone, right? But we need to be able to build power for working families in their communities, right?
Oh,
so
that's
workers
nice.
Aren't just, they don't cease to be workers when they leave the workplace.
Yeah.
They're community members, right? And so we're that bridge. We're connecting those two worlds together. We partner with existing community organizations. I try to identify those that are actually being directly impacted by the policies that we're trying to move, and we connect with our labor partners to move policy interventions that are going to change the working conditions for people. And so it really is about that alliance building. It's about building a bridge where folks can work together, and about expanding the movement's capacity to actually take on corporate power and actually make meaningful gains.
Yeah, I really like what you said about, when workers leave, they're, now they're people, they're home, their community. Yeah, that's great. And I love that bridging. So what are some of the impacts of LAANE's work? What are you proud of?
I mean, we've got a lot to stand on. I mean, LAANE is known for some of our early work, right? We pioneered the living wage, and so the living wage in '97 was really one of the first campaigns that we took on that then took off, and it served as a model for well over 100 other cities who went on to adopt the living wage as a campaign to run. It's a campaign that we still use. We still use living wage as a strategy, and I could talk a little bit more later about Measure RW in Long Beach and the current Tourism Workers Rising campaign here in LA. But we also pioneered the Community Benefit Agreement campaign, which is essentially if you've got a development that is going to be publicly subsidized, then you need to make sure that publicly subsidized project is maximizing public benefit for the public good.
Yeah.
And so it's whether it's investments in community resources or creating pathways to good family sustaining union jobs, right? And that's done locally, right? That we're hiring locally. Nice. And so taking advantage, right, of public money and the opportunity that public investment brings to make sure that we're maximizing public benefit for the public good. And so, those are, I think, a lot of the two of the accomplishments that I'm really proud to stand on, and a lot of folks have put in a lot of work to make sure that we can actually win some of those campaigns. And, a lot of our work today is just kind of a continuation of some of that, and thinking up of new policy ideas that can, can raise the floor for folks. The Fair Work Week policy that we just passed for grocery and retail, nice. to make sure that folks have predictable schedules, right pay and other things like that.
Yeah.
But we feel like we're really well positioned to continue to help be that bridge and to help continue to build power.
Yeah, and it's nothing new. You guys have been doing this, which is great. It's you can continue to do it. Okay, so you first got involved with LAANE building worker power in Long Beach. So can you tell us more about that campaign and what you learned while being a part of it?
Yeah, so the Long Beach campaign, Close to my heart. It was, I'm obviously biased, but I think I started at LAANE 2017. Long Beach was my first campaign. I'll never forget this. It was my second day on the job. The policy had been worked on. It was a policy to prevent sexual assault and abuse on the job.
Oh, wow.
It was an ordinance that had come together through surveying of workers. Community groups had come together to work on it. 4 years in the making. It was at a council vote. That was my second day. I remember this, and I will not forget this. The leader of the LA County Federation of Labor was there, and other electeds that had endorsed the policy were also there. And we had packed the room with well over 200 hotel workers and community members that were present, and the measure failed. And it was a gut-wrenching moment, because I think for me personally, like, I see my mom and a lot of the workers that I work with, and so it was just hard not to be impacted by seeing how gutted a lot of these workers were. Women of color who work day in and day out in the hotel sector, and it was a jarring loss. And I think in reflecting on that, we had to come to terms with the fact that we just did not have the power to win.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a sober assessment to have, and a very difficult one that I think a lot of us in the movement, try to make sure that we always do. It's like sometimes we just do not have the power to win. And so, how are we building power to win, I think was really the lesson learned out of that experience for me. And so, we said we're not going to be deterred. We're going to take this thing to the ballot. And so we collected 46,000 signatures. We got it onto the ballot. It took a lot, good amount of effort, an amazing volunteer effort, as well as a paid team effort that we ran, and we were able to win with, well over 65% of the vote in Long Beach. And so,
to feel good.
We had righteousness on our side, and so I think it was just a matter of making sure that we were building the right amount of power to get this across the finish line. And so I think, for me, it was a great first lesson, not just in really having a more refined sense of power, but also in what it takes to win. And it takes organizing. It takes conversations. It takes talking to your neighbors, difficult conversations, and grinding it out. And and truth be told, that's been a winning formula. And I think, given where we're at, in the national context, that I think is still a winning formula, and will continue to be a winning formula. It's just that's how we build power, and that's how we win.
Yeah, and something I really find interesting about what you say, is like the human side of these issues, right? Like when you say the people that you're fighting for remind you of your mom, and like when you went away to college and you could really and what your parents allowed you to do by having their jobs. I think that's so important too, right? It's like these aren't just issues; these are people, these are lives. Yeah. So it's really important work. Like that's. Yeah. And I think too often, right? I think, folks, I remember like even conversations most recently with like, the minimum wage, well, it's going to raise prices and like, well, that's one, it's a talking point. But two, you have people living in their cars. Ooh, yeah.
Right? You got people and like working more than one job to make ends meet. Like, is that the world that we want to live in? And like ultimately, like working people should have a voice in how their tax money is used, how their communities are being developed. But I think most importantly, like what standard of living we should accept, and what the minimum standard of living should be, right? And so these fights are really not just about increasing the minimum wage, but it's about what kind of moral economy do we want to build, and what should people expect? One job should be enough. Like I shouldn't have to choose between paying for school supplies or gas and food or rent, right? Yeah. Which a lot of people are having to do, and nobody should be sleeping in their car working full time. Like that's just not something that needs to be happening in this economy.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I'm glad LAANE is there. Okay, so I want to make sure that we covered. Because you mentioned just the ballot measure, was that in the most recent election that win, or that was the previous one?
So that was a previous one. Okay. I mean, so the thing about Long Beach that's so special is that it's a I think it's a blueprint, right, for like what's needed in the moment. We started doing work there in 2007. We ran our first initiative in 2012, and since then have run around I think 4 different initiative campaigns, all with the goal of building power and shifting, I think, the political landscape in that city to be a more pro-worker city. And so when I first started, we could not get a 5th vote. and we failed on an issue that should have been a home run.
Now, what do you
for
mean
a
by
lot
a
of
fifth
elected.
vote?
So the council is nine members in Long Beach, and that night the ordinance that we were pushing in 2017 failed in a 5-4 vote.
Oh wow!
And so Long Beach has come a long way in terms of a city that I would say just was not pro-worker, and I could say now proudly because of a lot of the work that we've done and that we've invested in terms of these election campaigns, these initiatives, and a lot of these other efforts. We have an African American mayor, the first time that's happened in that city, and I think we have a pro-worker majority in that city
that's
now.
Nice.
And so it's a different context, but is born out of the years-long investment in organizing that it took. And so this past March, we were able to raise the wage for hospitality workers in the city, and it's the highest living wage in the country.
Oh, wow.
And it's what we're trying to do in LA, but Long Beach led that effort.
Oh, that's
and
great.
So it's $25 an hour, and it'll be $30 by the time the Olympics come around.
Wow.
It's an Olympic and Paralympic wage for our workers, and Long Beach is leading the way. And it's a testament to
huge.
The work that's been put in to just make it work. And so we won that in March, and then most recently we've been flexing all that capacity to win on other issues. So Measure A, which maybe hopefully a lot of folks voted for this time around. I mean, they did because we ended up winning. Was on the ballot. Yep. The last time a measure like this was on the ballot, Long Beach voted against it. Measure H.
Can you talk more about what that is?
So it was a sales tax that would have generated revenue to go towards housing and homelessness initiatives to deal with the crisis. And so Measure A is going to replace Measure H, which is set to expire in 2027. And so the first time around, the city itself, lost out. Essentially, the majority of people that voted in the Measure H race actually voted against it. But this time around, I think because of the infrastructure that we've built and the community and the ecosystem that we've kind of helped develop down there, Measure A resoundingly has won in the region. And we were able to knock on over 36,000 doors to kind of help bring this effort home. And that meant talking upwards of around 8,400 people and IDing close to 6,000 yeses and turning them out. And so our operations has evolved and grown. Yeah. But again, it just goes back to organizing and how important it is. And so Long Beach is leading the way in more ways than one because of what we've invested in over the long haul.
I love hearing that too. Like it reminds me of you saying like, now you know what it takes, to win, like doing that, knocking on those doors. But also I always hear, or like people like to say like California leads the way, like it'll happen here, but then to hear it even on like the smaller scale, Long Beach leads the way before California. You don't think about all of the little parts along the way. So I'm like really glad to hear that, what LAANE is doing and how it contributes to that.
Oh yeah.
That's very cool. So LAANE does a lot of work to address and combat the climate crisis in LA. Can you talk a little bit about your campaign to invest in healthy and green public schools?
So this one's actually a really cool campaign. And so, I mean, obviously, the climate crisis is real. I think what we're facing is unprecedented. It's a generational challenge. I mean, I think, for my kids, it's like I worry about the world that they're going to inherit. But I think regionally, we're trying to do our best to make sure that the region is at zero emissions, that we're meeting our decarbonization goals. Yeah. And this conversation around decarbonization is like, it's transportation, right? Emissions. It's new construction and zero emissions on that end. It's the residential construction piece. And so when we were thinking about where we can kind of go deep and add value, we came up with the school district. Now, LAUSD is the second largest school district in the country. Has over 20,000 facilities in the region. It's one of the top land holders in the region, and it's a public institution that is accountable to the public. And so for us, we were like, well, we can meet the climate crisis by pushing LAUSD to invest in green infrastructure and create pathways to family-sustaining green jobs, green union jobs for people in the process. Now, I'm an LAUSD kid. Grew up in Northeast LA, went to LAUSD schools. I remember being being seared by those monkey bars, because it would be mad hot.
Yeah.
And that still happens today.
Wow.
Right. And so, we can change that for students. We can green our schoolyards. We can, we can save our kids from getting burned from being outside, playing outside. But, we can do that by having, by greening our schoolyards, creating stormwater capture projects, by having solar on our campuses that help play a role in the community, that give back to the grid. I mean, the district could be its own power plant in a lot of instances. There are a lot of lead pipes that are, water quality issues that still go around. So we can replace a lot of those pipes. And, we can do all of this by creating good union jobs.
Yeah.
And the thing about greening the schools is that schools are everywhere. And they are strategically positioned in all parts of the region. They're in parts of the city that don't have access to green space, right? And so they can also play a really important role in getting communities who do not have access to green space.
That's really smart.
And so our climate campaign is about meeting the moment of the climate crisis regionally, trying to push LAUSD to take advantage of the federal infrastructure dollars that the Biden administration was able to pass, and to green its infrastructure, and to do it in a way that's creating jobs for students, their family members, but not just any kind of jobs, but good union jobs, right, that give back to the community. And so we're really excited about that. We've been, it's going to be a process with the district. It takes trust building, and we've been able to get them to apply to a couple grants. Most recently, we're going to keep on at it. And we really think solar is a really good opportunity for them to build solar on their public infrastructure, and, to have it be something that can benefit the community more broadly, because the school should be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
20,000, it's just mind-boggling. You think about just how many buildings there are.
I love that, and they're strategically placed.
Exactly.
You can touch every neighborhood.
And we didn't even talk about their fleet alone is as big as some cities, right?
Oh, wow.
The vehicles that they use to transport goods, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about EV infrastructure and what that means, so the possibilities are really exciting. And so that's, our climate campaign is really rooted in trying to hone in on LAUSD as a public entity, and to make sure that we can push it in the best way possible to help meet the climate crisis.
Yeah, and I like how you talk about it's not just about the climate crisis is enough, right? But it's addressing the climate crisis, but also in a way that creates jobs, good jobs that create a better way of life for the community. I really like hearing it that way, because it seems like sometimes we hear about the climate crisis, but not what it can do for us and people who the powers that be need to know where the benefit is. So that's great.
Oftentimes these solutions take a lot of investment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And people, people will be reticent about, we got to spend a lot of money, to be able to make this happen. Yes, you do, but you got to think about the investment and what it could do if the investment is done in a way that is maximizing public good.
Yeah.
Right? If you've got people that are being, put into pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship pathways.
That's so nice.
They're getting paid to go and be trained. Then they're going to get a union job that has a pension. That's a benefit for the community.
Yeah,
because they're going to spend money.
Yes, exactly.
Spend money locally. Their kids are going to it has a lot of benefits in that way. So I think for us, it's yes, it's about meeting the climate crisis and the green opportunities that can come with it, but it's also about creating job pathways for folks.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad you're doing this work, and I'm so glad to be hearing about it, because it's helping to change the way I think about things too. So thank you. So many WGA West members are familiar with LAANE through the Tourism Workers Rising Coalition, which I know I met some people on the picket line. They're very nice. I think I'm in some videos online.
Nice.
But they were very nice, and you never forget the people that showed up for you. So yeah. And WGA West is a member of the Tourism Workers Rising Coalition, which aims to raise the minimum wage for tourism workers in Los Angeles before the 2028 Olympics, like you mentioned. So could you tell me a little bit more about the coalition and how many workers will be impacted by this?
Yeah, so this is a special campaign. I mean, it's part of our Olympic and Paralympic strategy. I mean, look, these workers, they greet people from all over the world and a lot of them are living paycheck to paycheck.
Well, talk about who are the tourism workers? Like, what does that include?
Yeah, so we're talking about hotel workers, right? The folks that the housekeepers that are cleaning your room, right? Folks that are working at the banquet halls, but also airport workers and the concession workers that are at the airport. And so it's a really important part of the workforce that is going to play a fundamental part of the Olympics and a lot of what's coming for the city. And the effort is massive. You all are an amazing partner, and much appreciated to the solidarity that has been shown, I think, to each other, right, in supporting each other on the line and trying to get this policy through. We have over 150 organizations that have joined the effort that are part of the coalition. Over 350 small businesses that have also joined because they understand that if workers are paid enough and are able to live in their community, they will spend money locally and will benefit the local economy. And so, I think for us, this is about making sure that workers get their due, but that we're also growing the economic, like the economy here locally, right?
Yes.
In terms of making sure that folks can live and work in the same place. And so, it's a tough campaign. We're feeling good, and we've got a lot of good momentum. It's been around two years now that we've been kind of pushing this policy. The industry's come out and said the sky is going to fall, like they have, I think, normally. But we actually put out a report that said the sky never fell because we've done this before. And, they've got a ton of money. I think they got $14 billion in paycheck protection loans during the pandemic.
Wow.
The sector has rebounded pretty well, I think. I would say.
They're doing okay.
And the outlook is pretty big for the sector. I mean, it's not just the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Yeah.
You got the Club World Cup, you have the World Cup, you have the Super Bowl.
Oh, wow.
And this is all in the next few years.
Wow.
The sector is going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, from the last go around in our research, the sector was fine. They can afford to do this. They can give their workers what they are owed. And so our hope is that, we can get this through City Council and have this be the first Olympic victory that we have.
Oh, that's nice.
Because ultimately it's part of the larger strategy to make sure that the city is better off after the games than it was before the games.
Oh, that's good.
Right, because there's a lot that's being said. Obviously the Olympics, a lot of thoughts on the Olympics, right? I think what we do know is that it's happening. It's coming. And what is happening, there's almost a lack of imagination in terms of what are the legacy improvements that are going to happen before the games.
Yeah.
This is a legacy improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We can raise the floor so that workers, are making a living wage and a dignified wage, and we can start with our hospitality and airport workers.
I love that, and I wonder if that becomes like a blueprint, like when another city gets the Olympics. You know what I mean? And then it's
I would hope so.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not just trickle? Yeah, I love that. So how can you mentioned that like maybe WGA West members we could show our support and get involved, like maybe at City Council when you're up. What are some other ways that we can help out?
Yeah, so definitely follow us on Instagram. I think if you go, it's like at Tourism Workers Rising LA.
Okay.
We've got a few bit.lys that you can link to and to stay tuned and get updates, but there'll be future actions that folks can plug into. But that's probably the easiest way is just to get plugged in through our Instagram.
So can you talk about like the recent election and like the change in administration to one that is like hostile to workers? How does that impact your focus, and how can we fight back and help fight back?
This is tough. Yeah. I mean, I think now, I think now more than ever, we're going to need to continue to build with each other. We're going to need immense strength and solidarity to kind of push through what's coming. It's not a matter of if it's going to be a hostile administration. It will be a hostile administration. And the workplace, I think, is going to be a central part of the struggle these next few years. Most relevantly, what's been talked about is the immigration question. The raids are going to be happening, and they're going to uptick these raids, and workplace raids are going to be certainly a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for us, like we're thinking about, not just the defensive fights that are going to happen, because those will come, but how do we stay on the offensive, right?
That's
and
nice.
Keep holding the line. And I think to the earlier point, California, I think more recently in its history has a legacy of, of being the model. Yeah. And we have to continue to hold that line. We have to push the envelope. We have to take advantage of the alignment that there is here locally, I think, to put forward solutions that are more creative and continue to build power for working families. And that, I think, will be the best type of resistance that we can offer in these next 4 years, is making sure that we have immense solidarity, that we are building inroads and alliances across different sectors and partnerships that are needed, and that we're working together to just hold each other, right?
Yeah.
And we got to get each other, because I think ultimately it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough. But I think, the winning formula comes back to organizing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's those difficult conversations, it's the heart-to-hearts, it's the actions that we provide people to take that's going to make the difference.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned. I think there's going to be a lot of action that is going to be coming up, a lot of opportunities to get involved. It's going to be a challenging next 4 years, but I also think you're going to see a lot of inspiration, I think, in the actions that are going to be coming forward, because a lot of people got a lot of fight in them. And I think, I know we at LAANE are resolved to continue to push the envelope here, and a lot of other allies are as well. So.
Absolutely. And I wonder, when you talk about difficult conversation, what do you mean by what are those difficult conversations that?
Well, I think there's a lot of, a lot of assessment in terms of what happened, right, with the election.
Got it.
And I think for us, we're committed, and we've been committed to this idea that the economy does not work for everyone. And that's what it is. And part of that is making sure that we are very clear that corporate influence and billionaires who have really taken a hold of our economy are doing it in a way to benefit themselves and not the grand majority of folks, of working people. And so I think building solidarity amongst working class voters,
convincing people
and convincing them
what's
that
really happening, the reality.
The reality of the situation is we got folks that are actually, they run City Hall, right? They have a outweighted influence in the way in which government runs. And government is a tool to combat, right, corporate influence and the billionaire class and what's going on here locally. And I think those conversations are tough, because I think, some people may not share the same analysis. Yeah. But I think for us at LAANE, we have to build, a multiracial working class movement. And that comes with having a very clear analysis of the economy. And maybe it even begins with stop referencing it as the economy and start owning it as our economy. Yeah. Right. And doing what's needed to build an economy that is more rooted in our values. That's a moral economy. That's a solidarity economy.
You mentioned moral economy earlier. I like that a lot.
And it starts with these fights like living wage, right? It goes back to this idea that working people should have a voice in setting the standard of what the living conditions should be, right? And no one should have to be living paycheck to paycheck. And so these fundamental questions and what it means to actually make inroads, on those topics, I think will take difficult conversations, but those are organizing opportunities. And I think huge amount of opportunity, I think, for us moving forward to kind of continue to build with each other so that we can keep winning.
Yeah, no, that's great work. Something I'm interested in, going way back to. Because you mentioned what a privilege it is to get to work in Northeast LA. Is there anything that you've been able to do in your own community, in your home community, that you're proud of?
I think, for me, the LUSD thing's an interesting one, because I went to LUSD schools. And so for me, being able to start that project, and to work on it, and before I transitioned into the executive director role, it was very special to me, because a lot of us that went to LU schools, we lived at we it was mad hot, recess and lunch, and my parents never bought me white shoes because they knew I would come back and they'd just be dirty the next day, right? Kickball and all the rest. But the more you learn about lead in the pipes, right, or our ability to save water, or the missed opportunities with solar, and to do it in a way that would impact where I grew up. And then I think more importantly for me now, that's going to impact my kids' future. Yeah. To me is really important, and it's heartwarming. And so there's still a lot of aspects of me and my story that I see in our campaign work. And so I think for me, that's an example of how I feel I get to give back to my local community. It's these schools that I went to, they deserve to get these upgrades. And our community members, folks that I went to high school with, right, that maybe did not get a fair shot in the economy, like they deserve to have access to good paying union jobs, right? Because ultimately we all do, right? And so I think for me, that's kind of what is a little bit more fulfilling for me, is to be able to do that kind of work.
No, that's great. And your passion is clear. Like, you're a great leader. Well, was there anything that I didn't mention or something that you would want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think, well, one, I really appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and to even to be on this. Great I think combo. It's really, really awesome. I just, I mean, I think to just kind of reemphasize the point around solidarity and, the need for solidarity, I think, moving forward. And, we've got a tough hill to climb, but just to emphasize that, like, it's not enough to build power just in the workplace. We've got to build it, with workers in their communities. And I think that, that and the solidarity that will be built from that is what's going to save us. And so I'm excited to play a role in that. I've been the ED now for less than a year, and at LAANE it's a 30-year institution, and so I'm excited to kind of help move this path forward and to build with folks and to build with y'all and to continue to win some victories that change people's lives. So.
And I'm excited. I'm sure a lot of WGA West members were excited to keep fighting right alongside you, because this is what we need. So thank you so much for joining me today, Victor. Listeners, if you want to learn more about LAANE and the work they're doing, check out their website, www.laane.org. That's www.laane.org. And be sure to check out writtenby.com, the official publication of the Writers Guild of America West, where you can learn more about the labor fights happening in and around Hollywood. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. If you like this episode or have a comment, email us at podcast@wga.org. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. And see you next time.